The sound of metal folding around me didn't sound like in the movies. It was a wet, tearing scream, cut short by the crunch of glass, my own breath punching out of my lungs, and then silence swallowed by sirens. Headlights spun. The world tilted. I remember the dashboard slamming into my ribs, the seatbelt carving across my chest, the steering wheel jolting left as the fishtailing truck came out of nowhere on the slick stretch of I-64. Thanksgiving week. I was 31, a Navy corpsman, driving home in my beat-up sedan with a pie on the passenger seat and my dress blues hanging in the back. 1 second, southbound lanes and windshield wipers. The next, white airbags and the copper taste of blood in my mouth. I tried to inhale. Nothing. My chest burned, hot, then cold. I heard someone yelling far away. "Stay with me! Ma'am, stay with me!" I wanted to answer. My tongue felt like sandpaper. My dog tags dug into my throat. The last thing I saw before the world narrowed was my phone. Screen face down on the floorboard. Emergency contacts still set to Mom and Dad. Not because they'd earned it, just because I'd never bothered to change it. Then black. The ER had its own soundtrack. Monitors beeping in overlapping rhythms. A vent hissing. The squeak of shoes on linoleum. Voices that felt too loud and too far away at the same time. I floated in and out on a tide of morphine and pain. "Internal bleed," someone said. "Probable splenic rupture. Lungs compromised. BP's tanking again. We need consent now." I tried to open my eyes. The light stabbed. "Petty Officer Collins? Maya, can you hear me?" A woman's voice, close and calm. "I'm Dr. Ames. You've been in a car accident. We need to get you to surgery, but we need a signature." My lips moved. "Sign," I rasped, or thought I did. She squeezed my hand. "We're calling your parents," she said. "You listed them as your emergency contacts. Try to breathe for me." There was a mechanical clunk as the bed moved, the sharp smell of antiseptic and metal rails. Air clawed at my throat. Down the hall, through the haze, I heard her voice again, sharper now, on the phone. "Mrs. Collins, this is Dr. Ames from Norfolk General. Your daughter has internal bleeding. We need your consent for—" I heard my mother before I heard the party. Music in the background, clinking glasses, a low buzz of conversation. Then her laugh, bright and brittle. "It's Thanksgiving Eve," she said. "We're hosting. Is this urgent?" Dr. Ames's voice sharpened. "Yes, ma'am," she said. "Your daughter was in a serious car accident. We suspect splenic rupture. If we don't get her into surgery soon, she could—" The speakerphone picked up my mother's sigh, exaggerated for effect. "If she dies, let me know," she said. "We don't have time for paperwork right now." The words cut cleanly through morphine fog. A beat of quiet. Someone near my mother laughed nervously. My father's voice drifted in, lazy and distant. "She's 31, he said. "She made her own decisions. We're not liable. Tell them that." Dr. Ames's tone dropped into something I recognized from trauma bays and battlefield tents. The voice you use when you're fighting for someone's life. "Mr. Collins, Mrs. Collins," she said. "I'm trying to save your daughter. I need a yes or a no." "You have my answer," my mother replied. "We're in the middle of something. We'll revisit this tomorrow." The line clicked. The hallway noise rushed back in. For a moment, everything inside me went very, very still. I'd always known where I ranked behind fundraisers and photos. I just didn't think I'd ever hear it spelled out over speakerphone, while I lay bleeding under fluorescent lights. "Doctor?" a nurse whispered. "What do we do?" "What we can," Dr. Ames said, voice tight. "She's temporarily incapacitated.
We need consent. If family won't sign, I'll sign." The voice was rough, old, and familiar in a way that punched through the morphine. I knew that drawl.
Had heard it joking about bad knees and good coffee while we rebuilt a rotten ramp one summer. "Sir, this is a legal document," the nurse said. "Are you family?" "No," he said. "I'm better. I'm Navy." He stepped into my blurry field of vision. Harold Hal Benton, late 70s, weathered face, white hair cropped close, faded ship tattoo on his forearm. He wore a battered navy ball cap and a flannel shirt with paint specks at the cuffs. He'd been one of my ramp patients, the one who'd insisted on bringing us lemonade while we installed new railings at his brick house, the one who'd shown me an old Polaroid of my grandfather on a deck somewhere in the Pacific. "Name's Harold Benton," he told the doctor. "She rebuilt my ramp in August with her own 2 hands. Her granddad and I served together in '69. He always said, 'We take care of our own. If her folks won't sign, I will.'" Dr. Ames hesitated. "Sir, we can't," she started. "You told me what she has," he cut in. "I heard what they said. You're out of time. You need someone with a spine and a pen. I've got both." Paper rustled. "Legally, under emergency doctrine," another voice, social worker maybe, said, "if family refuses and the patient is at risk of death, the attending can appoint a surrogate with prior relationship. We can document it. It'll stand." Dr. Ames let out a slow breath. "Mr. Benton," she said, "you understand the risks?" "I understand the risk of doing nothing," he replied. "And I'm not watching another sailor bleed out because people who share her last name don't want their party interrupted." A pen scratched. The crash in my chest pulsed again, pain flaring white, then dimming. Hal's hand closed around mine, rough and steady. "I got you, Collins," he murmured. "You got my ramp? I got your life. Fair trade." In that moment, with my parents' laughter still echoing faintly through a severed call and the hospital ceiling blurring above me, I felt something shift. Blood had started my story, but the name on the line between guardian and signature, that belonged to someone else. I woke up to the taste of plastic and the steady mechanical hiss of air forcing its way into my lungs. For a second, I thought I was back in the field clinic in Kandahar. Same antiseptic smell, same harsh fluorescent light, same scratchy blanket over a body that felt like it belonged to someone else. Then I tried to move. Pain ripped through my left side, sharp and deep, like somebody had driven a hot crowbar under my ribs and left it there. A monitor beeped faster. "Easy," a nurse said, appearing above me. Her badge read, Kelly. "You're okay, Petty Officer Collins. You're at Norfolk General. You've just come out of surgery." I blinked. My throat was raw. Every swallow felt like sand. "Lungs," I croaked. "You had a punctured lung and internal bleeding," she said gently. "We repaired your spleen as much as we could. Tube's out now, but you'll feel it for a while." Memory rushed back in fragments. Headlights, the truck, my mother's voice on speaker. "Let me know if she dies. We don't have time for paperwork." My fingers twitched against the sheet. "Parents?" I rasped. The words scraped my throat. Nurse Kelly hesitated. Her eyes softened. "They were contacted," she said carefully. "They declined to authorize surgery." My stomach rolled. "Declined," I repeated. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "Under emergency doctrine, our attending appointed a surrogate," she added quickly. "Someone with prior connection to you. He signed. It gave us the green light to operate." "Who?" I asked. She smiled. "Mr. Harold G. Benton," she said. "He's been in the waiting room most of the night. You want to see him?" The name landed like a flare in the dark. Hal. Ramp guy. Grandpa's old shipmate. Yeah, I whispered. Yeah, please. She squeezed my shoulder gently, then disappeared. While she was gone, the room hummed. Monitors kept their rhythm. IV drip clicked. I stared at the ceiling tiles, the little brown water stain in the corner, and let the reality seep in. My parents had chosen canapes and donor selfies over signing a line to keep me alive. That knowledge settled in my chest, heavier than the surgical dressing. The door opened with a soft swoosh. "Permission to come aboard?" a familiar voice said. I turned my head slowly. Hal stood just inside the doorway, cap in his hands, hair more mussed than usual. He'd traded his flannel for a clean button-up, but his jeans still had paint on the knees. His eyes were red around the edges. "You look like 10 miles of bad road," he said, trying for a grin. It wobbled. "Feel like it," I managed. He came to the bedside, movements careful, like he was approaching a wounded animal. "Wasn't sure you'd want to see me," he admitted. "Figured I'd take my chances." "You signed," I said. The words came out rough. "You were the guardian." He nodded, fingers knotting around his cap bill. "Doc said they needed a name on a line," he said. "Yours was fading. Parents hung up. I had a pen." He shrugged, as if it were nothing. "It was either that or watch 'em stand there with their hands tied while you bled out," he went on. "Your granddad would have haunted my ass if I let that happen." A memory flickered. August heat, the smell of sawdust, sweat trickling down my back as I helped bolt new railings to his front steps. His gravel driveway dusted my boots. He'd insisted on bringing us lemonade in an old chipped pitcher. "You Collins girls don't do things halfway," he'd said, watching me wrestle a warped board into place. "Your granddad was the same. Stubborn as a mule, heart like a ship's bell. Swore me to one promise. If you ever needed help and he wasn't around, I'd show up." I'd laughed then, chalking it up to old-timer sentiment. Now, lying in a hospital bed with stitches pulling at my side, his promise was written down somewhere in black ink. "You didn't have to," I said. My throat tightened around the words. "Sure I did," he replied. "Those ramps you built, you didn't have to either. Could have stayed on base, kept your weekends to yourself. But you came out, lugged lumber in the heat, listened to an old man's stories like they mattered." His gaze sharpened. "Don't cheapen what you did for me by acting like this is some debt you owe," he said. "This is how it works. One sailor spits on the deck, the next one cleans it so nobody slips. We take care of our own." The room blurred for a second. Not from meds, from something else swelling behind my eyes that I'd spent years training myself to swallow. "Did they call?" I asked, voice small. "My parents." He hesitated. "No," he said finally. "Social worker tried, doc tried. Nobody picked up. Phones must have been busy." I pictured champagne flutes, my mother's manicured hand wrapped around a stem, my father's easy grin as he charmed donors with his "Our daughter serves" line. The monitor beeped faster. Hal reached out, laid his hand over mine. His palm was rough, warm, steady. "Hey," he said. "Don't burn energy you need to heal on people who couldn't be bothered to pick up a phone. You're here. You're breathing. They can sort out their choices later." I stared at our hands, brown skin and weathered white knuckles. Not blood, but something that felt more solid than anything I'd grown up with in that immaculate Chesapeake house. "How long were you here?" I asked. He shrugged. "Got here about an hour after they brought you in," he said. "Nurse I know from my last knee surgery texted me.
Said there was a Collins in trouble. Didn't know it was you until I heard the doc in the hall talking about a petty officer who rebuilt some ramps free of charge. He smiled faintly. Sat out in the waiting room while they cut you open, he said. Said a few words to the big chief upstairs. Yelled at a vending machine. You know, guardian things. The image of him pacing under fluorescent lights,
Cap in his hands, while my parents clinked glasses under chandeliers, made something hot and clean burn through my chest. Not anger, exactly. Clarity. A knock at the door pulled us both from the moment. A woman in a blazer stepped in, a folder tucked under one arm. Her badge read, Social Worker Daniels. Petty Officer Collins, she said gently. Good to see you awake. I'm Ms. Daniels. We spoke briefly while you were under. You probably don't remember. I didn't. She moved closer, keeping her voice low. I wanted to check on you, she said, and to talk about your emergency contacts. My fingers tightened around Hal's. He squeezed back. We documented everything from last night's call, she continued. Your parents' refusal, Mr. Benton's consent, the surgery. You're stable now, which means you get to make your own decisions again. She opened the folder, slid a form onto the tray table over my lap. On it, in sharp black type, Emergency Contact and Medical Decision Maker Update. Lines waited for names. For the first time in my life, I realized that those blanks were mine to fill, not inherited slots I had to accept. You can keep it how it is, she said. You can remove them. You can add new people. It's your choice. I'd encourage you to think about who actually shows up when it counts. Her gaze flicked to Hal. He looked down, suddenly fascinated by a loose thread on his sleeve. You don't have to answer today, she added. You're still pretty out of it, but I wanted you to know that you're not stuck with the default just because that's how it's always been. The room hummed around us. The old Maya, the one who smoothed things over at family dinners, who wore whatever dress Mom laid out and laughed at Dad's stories about her little Navy phase, would have said, let's leave it. They didn't mean it. They were busy. The Maya who had stitched strangers back together under fire, who had just heard her own life weighed against a party over speakerphone, felt something else unfurl in her chest. A quiet, stubborn line. Hal cleared his throat. You don't have to do anything because of me, he said. I signed because someone had to. You don't owe me a spot on any form. I looked at him, at his weathered face, the worry lines, the ship tattoo that matched the one on my grandfather's old photographs, at the man who had already done, without hesitation, what my parents had literally refused to do. You sat in a waiting room while I was on a table, I said. You made a choice when my own family hung up. That pen you used? That counts. I reached for the pen clipped to the form. My hand shook. Pain flared in my side. Nurse Kelly stepped in, watching carefully, but didn't intervene. You sure you want to do this now? Ms. Daniels asked. We can come back. I thought of my mother, smiling for donors, phone face down on a linen-covered table. My father's shrug. She makes her own decisions. For once, they were right. I put the pen to paper. Under primary emergency contact, I wrote, Harold G. Benton. Under relationship, I paused. Friend? Veteran? None of it felt big enough. I settled on guardian, Navy family. Under secondary, I wrote the name of my chief, someone who'd pulled more than one of us out of bad nights. Then I drew a line through my parents' names, not in anger, in accuracy. I signed my own name at the bottom, each stroke of ink feeling like a suture closing something that had been bleeding for a long time. When I looked up, Hal was staring at the form like he'd never seen paper before. You sure about this, kid? He asked quietly. Guardianship comes with responsibilities. I yell a lot at football games. I don't always remember my reading glasses. I'm not exactly Hallmark material. I gave a small, crooked smile. Hallmark didn't show up last night, I said. You did. He swallowed, Adam's apple bobbing. I'll do right by it, he said. By you. And by him. He tapped his chest over the faded ship tattoo. Your granddad, he added. Old man always said I owed him one. I let my head sink back into the pillow, the room spinning less now. The betrayal still hurt. It would for a long time. But somewhere under the ache and the bandages, a new fact settled in. If blood refused to sign for me, I could put the pen in someone else's hand. And in the end, the signature that saved my life didn't share my last name. It shared my values. The first time they made me sit up, I thought my stitches were going to unzip. Sweat broke out along my hairline even though the room was cool. The elastic of the hospital gown scratched my collarbone. My lungs pulled against the healing tissue with each shallow breath. Slow, the physical therapist said. Think inch, not mile. I grunted, teeth clenched, my fingers digging into the bed rails. The world wobbled, then steadied. In the corner chair, Hal watched like a man timing a launch, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes never leaving my face. You've had worse, he said when I caught his eye. Name one, I rasped. He grinned. Boot camp in August, he said. You told me you puked twice and kept marching. A laugh tried to rip out of my chest. It hurt enough that I let it die halfway. Days blurred. Morning labs, vitals, pain meds that made the edges soft but never quite erased the ache under my ribs. Every time I woke up, slats of pale winter light sliced through the blinds, dust motes drifting in the beams like slow snow. Every time, Hal was there. Sometimes reading a paperback with the cover folded back, sometimes dozing with his cap over his eyes, sometimes just sitting, hands folded, watching the doorway like he was on watch. The social worker came back with more forms, advance directives, durable power of attorney. All the paperwork people avoid until life grabs them by the throat. We can stagger it, she said gently. You don't have to do everything at once. Let's do it while I'm mad, I said. That's when I make the clearest decisions. She smiled, sad and knowing. We filled in more lines, names of people I trusted to say yes when I couldn't. None of them lived in the Chesapeake house I'd grown up in. My parents still didn't call. No flowers with their names on the little card. No texts asking how I was. My sister Sophie sent one message a week later. Heard you were in a wreck. Mom says you're overreacting about the surgery thing. Don't start drama before Christmas, okay? Kiss. I stared at the screen until the words blurred, then set the phone face down. Hal noticed. That from the folks? He asked. Sophie, I said. She's worried I'll mess up the holiday photos. He snorted. Holiday photos already messed up, he said. You're not in it. He went quiet for a beat. When my boy flipped his motorcycle at 21, he said, I drove 3 states in one night to get to his bed. Didn't occur to me to ask about what casserole I'd be late for. He didn't say, your parents aren't like that. He didn't need to. I watched his hands as he spoke, scarred knuckles, veins standing out under thin skin. The same hands that had signed my consent. By the time they discharged me to rehab, late November light had gone from sharp to leaden. Hal insisted on driving me to the rehabilitation unit. Hospital's got a shuttle, I protested, easing into the passenger seat. The seatbelt strap burned against the tender line under my ribs. Shuttle doesn't argue with nurses on your behalf, he said. I do. He brought me a small duffel he'd packed himself. Soft t-shirts, sweatpants, a book of crossword puzzles, a framed photo he'd printed from an old Polaroid. It was my grandfather. Young, grinning, standing on a ship's deck with his arm slung around a skinny sailor I recognized only from stories. How? He'd have wanted you to have it, Hal said, propping it on the bedside table. He always said the Collins women would be the death and the salvation of this family. The rehab ward smelled like floor cleaner and microwaved leftovers. The hallways were lined with metal rails, people shuffling slowly, IV poles squeaking. I learned how to walk again with a hand pressed against the incision, each step a negotiation between pain and progress. Hal showed up every afternoon with something smuggled in under his jacket, real coffee, a homemade sandwich, once a slice of pumpkin pie on a paper plate with plastic wrap over it. Hospital food's a war crime, he declared. I checked. Geneva's got nothing on their mashed potatoes. Sometimes we watched football in the day room, the TV flickering, the sound low. He yelled at the screen like the players could hear him. I discovered I liked having someone else's voice filling the space. A week before Christmas, my phone buzzed with a new message. Mom, we're doing a post-Thanksgiving, pre-Christmas thing on the 18th. Family, donors, neighbors. Would be nice if you could make an appearance so people stop asking. Wear something appropriate. No mention of the crash, the surgery, the fact that the reason people were asking was probably that half the town's nurses had heard that speakerphone call. Another text followed, this time from Dad. Glad you're okay. Doc said everything turned out fine. We knew it would. Don't be dramatic at the party. Your mother's stressed. My hand tightened around the phone. Bad news? Hal asked from his chair by the window, eyes on the small artificial tree someone had put up in the corner of the rehab gym downstairs. Invitation, I said. They want me to come to a holiday gathering. Smile, pose, reassure the donors their favorite charity hostess doesn't have a daughter who almost died on I-64. Ah, he said. The annual Collins photo op. I looked at him. You know about those? I asked. He smirked. I grew up in this town, kid, he said. I've seen your mother's newsletter. Nobody cuts clippings like Claudia Collins. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. No. Busy. Not coming. I deleted each one. What are you thinking? Hal asked. I'm thinking, I said slowly, that I don't want their version of this story to be the only one the family hears. They'll tell people I overreacted, that doctors exaggerated, that I'm being ungrateful. He tilted his head. And what do you want? He pressed. I stared at the framed photo of my grandfather on the bedside table, his grin frozen in the grainy print. I want, I said, to read their own words back to them in front of the people they've been performing for my whole life. Hal's brows lifted. You sure you're up for that? He asked. You're barely walking without wincing. I've patched up Marines with shrapnel still in them, I said. I can stand in my parents' living room for 10 minutes. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. All right, he said. But if you go, you don't go alone. I can drive, I started. He cut me off with a snort. You can barely climb into this chair without cussing, he said. I'll drive. I'll stand there. I won't say a word unless someone asks me who signed the line. His eyes hardened just a fraction. And if it gets too much, he added, we walk. Nobody locks you in that house again, not even with polite smiles. The idea of walking out, instead of being guilted into staying, lit something in my chest. Not anger, not revenge, just resolve. I opened my email app, pulled up the message Daniels had sent a few days earlier, the one with the attached PDF of the hospital's call log and consent transcript for my records. I printed it in the rehab office, the machine whirring and spitting out pages that still smelled faintly of toner.
black and white. Every timestamp, every attempt, every word, including my mother's line, verbatim. If she dies, let me know. We don't have time for paperwork. I slid the printout into a clear plastic folder, tucked it carefully into my bag.
Hal watched, brows raised. "Bringing receipts," he said. "Good." "Dad always said I was too emotional," I said. "Funny how calm ink looks." He chuckled, then sobered. "You sure you're ready to let this much light in?" he asked. "Once people hear it, they can't unhear it. Your folks can't spin it away with a Facebook caption." "That's the point," I said. He nodded slowly. "Okay, petty officer," he said. "You plan the mission. I'll drive the getaway car." As he stood to leave for the evening, he paused at the door. The hallway light silhouetted him, turning his outline into a familiar shape. Broad shoulders, slight hitch in his step, the weight of years carried in the set of his spine. "You know this might blow things up for good with them," he said. "No more pretending. No more, maybe they didn't mean it." I lay back against the pillows, the printout heavy in my bag, my side aching, the rehab room humming around me. "Good," I said. "I'm tired of pretending." He nodded once. "Then I'll pick you up on the 18th, he said. "Wear whatever makes it easier to breathe. I'll handle the tie and jacket circus." After he left, the room felt bigger and smaller at once. My phone buzzed once more. A group text from Sophie, a photo of my parents' living room, tree perfectly decorated, table set with matching china, my mother center frame in a sequin dress, wine glass in hand. "Countdown to Colin's holiday gala," the caption read. "Hope everyone can make it." I stared at the image, at the spotless floors I'd once been scolded for tracking mud on in my boots, at the woman who'd told an ER doctor my life could wait until dessert. I slid the phone under my pillow. My hand brushed the plastic folder there, edges sharp against the cotton. 2 weeks from now, I would walk back into that house, stitched together by surgeons and a stranger's signature. Not to beg, not to perform. Just to tell the truth. In their favorite room, in front of their favorite audience. And this time? When they tried to talk over me, I wouldn't be the one hanging up. The Collins house looked exactly like every holiday photo I'd grown up in. Perfect white lights wound up the porch columns, not a bulb out of place. Wreaths centered, windows glowing warm. Guest cars lined up along the curb like an ad for success. I adjusted the seatbelt as Hal pulled to the curb, my stitches tugging under my coat. "You don't have to go in," he said quietly. "We can do a ceremonial drive-by and go get pancakes instead." "I faced worse than canapes," I said. "Besides, I brought backup." He tapped the glove box where the plastic folder sat. "Receipts and a sailor," he said. "Strong combo." Inside, the heat hit first, scented with roasted turkey, cinnamon, and expensive perfume. The living room was full. Relatives, neighbors, donors, men in sport coats, women in jewel tones. The tree glittered in the corner, ornaments catching the light. The long dining table was a magazine spread. Crystal, matching china, napkins folded into perfect fans. My mother stood near the fireplace in a deep green cocktail dress, laughter turned up a notch. My father hovered nearby, a drink in hand, nodding through a story he'd told 100 times. Conversations dipped as people noticed me. "Is that Maya? Oh my God, we heard." I stepped fully into the room, Hal just behind me. The scar pulled under my ribs. I straightened anyway. My mother's smile faltered, then snapped back into place.
There she is, she trilled. Our little hero. Look at you walking already. We were just telling everyone how brave you've been. She swooped in for a hug, arms outstretched. I took a step back. Her hands froze midair. I'd rather not, I said. Stitches. A murmur rippled. My father cleared his throat. Good to see you up, kiddo, he said. Doctor said everything turned out fine. Bit of drama, but you made it. That's what matters. On cue, Sophie floated over. Glossy hair, perfect sweater, phone in hand.
We are so glad you're okay, she said, air kissing somewhere near my cheek. It was scary for everyone, you know? Mom barely slept. My chest tightened. Is that what she told you? I asked. Sophie frowned. Well, yeah, she said. She was frantic. Hospital calls, all that confusion. You know how systems get things wrong. Speaking of systems, I said, I brought something. I gestured to Hal. He handed me the plastic folder. The clear cover gleamed under the chandelier as I pulled out the pages. What's that? My mother asked, a warning note under the sugar. This, I said, voice steady, is the hospital's call log and transcript from the night of my accident. A hush fell. Someone muted the music. My father shifted, eyes flicking toward the kitchen as if he could disappear into a casserole. That's not necessary, my mother said quickly. We don't need to drag everyone into medical details. It's the holidays. It is necessary, I said, because for 31 years, you've told a story about who we are, and for once, I'm going to let the record show its work. I looked down at the page. Black ink, 2347, 2349, 2351. Hospital called you at 11:47 p.m., I read. Explained I had internal bleeding. Needed emergency surgery. They asked for consent. I lifted my eyes. Mom's face had gone a shade paler. They did not, she said. The connection was bad. It was all very confusing. I kept reading. Quote, I said, my voice cutting through the room. If she dies, let me know. We don't have time for paperwork. The words hung in the air like a dropped tray. Someone gasped. My aunt covered her mouth. Sophie's eyes flew to our mother. Mom? She whispered. That is taken completely out of context, my mother snapped. They're dramatizing. Doctors exaggerate for liability. You know how they are. Timestamp, I went on, ignoring her. 2351. Dad in the background. She's 31. She makes her own decisions. We're not liable. My father's jaw tightened. I never said, he began. I held up the page. Recorded and signed by 2 staff, I said. It's not my memory. It's theirs. It's in my chart. It'll be there long after tonight. The room felt smaller. No one reached for their drink. My mother tried to rally. We were in shock, she said. We didn't understand the severity. We thought it was just bruises. You were hosting, I said. I could hear the music, the glasses. I heard you laugh when you said it. The doctor explained the severity 3 times. It's all right here. I tapped the paper. If you had said, we're scared, or we don't know what to do, I might have understood. But you didn't. You told them my life could wait until dessert. Silence. In the corner, the tree lights blinked cheerfully, oblivious. And yet, I continued, someone signed. Someone stepped up when you hung up. I turned the next page. Consent form, I said. Signed Harold G. Benton at 2353. Relationship? Prior patient, Navy veteran, known to staff. Guardian by emergency surrogate appointment. Heads swiveled. Hal shifted his weight but didn't step back. Who is that? One of my uncles asked. My mother seized on the question. Exactly, she said, voice rising. Some old stranger. He had no right to sign for you. That's the real outrage here. Hospitals letting random people make decisions. He's not a stranger, I said. He's the sailor whose ramp I rebuilt last summer. He served with Granddad. He's the man who sat in the waiting room all night while surgeons cut me open because my parents decided a gala couldn't run itself. My mother's lips thinned. You are being ungrateful, she hissed. We have done everything for you. Paid for school, gave you a home. You didn't pay for my enlistment, I said. The Navy did. You didn't stand next to me in a dust storm while I stabilized someone's airway. You didn't hold the hand of a 19-year-old bleeding out in a tent. You showed up for photos when the uniform looked good next to your dress. My father's shoulders hunched, like he wanted to shrink. Now hang on, he started. No, I said. The word came out quiet, but it landed. For once, you're going to listen all the way through. Sophie took a step closer to our parents, as if she could shield them, or herself. I'm not here to beg, I said. I'm not here to scream. I'm here to say, in front of every person whose opinion you've ever cared about more than mine, you refused to sign. Someone else did. That's the truth. My mother's eyes flashed. You're punishing us, she said. You're trying to humiliate us in our own home. After everything we've done, you come in here and… I came in here and almost died, I said. You didn't sign then. I'm not asking you to sign anything now. That ship has sailed. I pulled another document from the folder. The paper was thinner, the ink fresher. This is my updated emergency contact and medical decision-maker form, I said. Filed with the hospital and the Navy. Primary contact, Harold G. Benton. Secondary, my chief. I laid it on the coffee table next to the decorative centerpiece. You are no longer my emergency contacts, I said. You are not my medical decision-makers. You are not my default anything in the eyes of any system that matters. My mother's hand flew to her chest. How dare you, she whispered. We are your parents. You are the people who raised me, I said. And last week, when I needed a guardian, you chose a room full of strangers over me. Hal chose me over a quiet night at home. That's the difference. A murmur rippled. My aunt wiped her eyes. Claudia, she whispered. Did you really say? Oh, for God's sake, it was a turn of phrase, my mother snapped. You all know how dramatic doctors can be. We were in the middle of an event. We needed time to process. From the back of the room, someone spoke up. It was my cousin Ben, usually the family clown. The only processing you needed was a pen, he said. Everything else could have waited. My father opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time in my life, he didn't have a story ready. That's why I'm here, I said. Not to ruin your party. To end the lie. I'm done being the backdrop for your perfect pictures. I turned to Hal. You ready to go? I asked. He nodded, jaw tight. My mother took a step forward, eyes glittering. You walk out that door. Don't come back, she said. You want to throw away your family for some old man you barely know? Fine. But don't expect us to pretend everything's fine at Christmas. Claudia, my father said weakly. Maybe that's… No, she snapped. I will not be slandered in my own home. I felt a strange calm settle over me. I'm not throwing away family, I said. I'm redefining it. I met her gaze. You taught me blood is everything, I said. The Navy taught me family is whoever drags you out of the wreck and sits by your bed while you heal. You made your choice that night. I'm making mine now. I picked up the folder, sliding the papers back in. My side throbbed, my legs trembled. Hal was already at my elbow, steady as a railing. We're leaving now, I said. You had your chance to sign for me. This is me signing for myself. I turned toward the door. Behind us, I heard my aunt's voice. Maya, she called. If you ever need anything. I glanced back. I know where the pens are now, I said. Thank you. We stepped out into the chilly air, the sound of muffled arguments already rising behind the closed door. The porch light glowed, the same light I'd snuck under as a teenager, trying to get in without scuffing the floor. Now, each step down the walkway felt like something else. A debrief, a boundary, a quiet, irreversible exit. Hal's truck smelled like pine-scented air freshener and old coffee. He waited until we'd pulled away from the curb and turned the corner before he said anything. You okay? He asked. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. My side ached. My knees felt watery. But under the physical pain, there was something clean. I expected it to hurt more, I said. He snorted. That's the morphine talking, he said. Give it an hour. I smiled, small. Seriously, I said. I thought I'd feel empty, or guilty, or like I'd just burned the only bridge I had. And now? He asked. I watched the Christmas lights blur past on other people's houses. I feel like I finally walked off a stage I never auditioned for, I said. They can keep performing without me. I don't have to be their prop anymore. He nodded, satisfied. Good, he said, because I wasn't about to watch you drag your IV pole through another one of those productions. We drove in companionable silence for a few minutes. When my boy stopped calling me, he said quietly. I spent a long time wondering what I did wrong. Turns out, sometimes people just don't know how to be the thing you need. Doesn't make you unlovable. Just makes them limited. He glanced at me. You're not limited, he added. You've got more love in you than you know what to do with. You just needed somewhere better to put it. Like your ramp? I said. He chuckled. Like my ramp, he said. And maybe my kitchen. His kitchen turned out to be exactly what I'd pictured. Small brick house, narrow driveway, ramp we'd rebuilt together that August, solid under my feet even now. Inside, the place smelled like old wood, coffee, and something frying in a cast-iron pan. Navy memorabilia lined the walls, ship plaques, faded photos, a shadow box with ribbons, a yellowing letter in a frame. He helped me out of my coat, moving carefully around my still stiff movements. I only have one guest room, he said. Sheets are clean, beds firm, bathrooms down the hall. If you need the good painkillers, yell. I've got a stopwatch on your dosing schedule. You've done this before, I said. Once or twice, he replied. My knees didn't replace themselves. That first night in his house, lying in a bed that smelled faintly of laundry soap and cedar, I listened to the sounds of someone moving in the kitchen. Dishes clinking. The low murmur of a game on TV. A soft curse when the announcer said something stupid. It was the first time in a long time I'd heard domestic noise and not felt like I had to make myself small to fit inside it. In the morning, he knocked lightly on the door. Coffee's on, he called. Eggs in 10. That fancy painkiller in 15. His timing was nearly perfect. Days there had a rhythm. Morning meds and breakfast, midday nap, afternoon walks to the mailbox, each step a little easier. Evening football or old war movies, him yelling at both. He never once asked me to pose for a picture. He did, however, hand me something small and round one evening as we sat at his tiny kitchen table, the TV murmuring in the other room. It was a challenge coin. Old, worn, the engraving smoothed by years of fingers. On one side, my grandfather's unit crest. On the other, words so faded I had to tilt it to the light to read them. We take care of our own. He gave me that in '70, Hal said. Told me if I ever forgot what we were for, I should look at it until I remembered. He glanced at the scar peeking over the collar of my t-shirt. I think he'd want you to have it now, he added. My throat tightened. I closed my fingers around the coin. It was warm, heavier than it looked. Thank you, I said. It didn't feel like enough. Don't thank me, he said. Thank the kid who showed up with a toolbox and treated my rotten ramp like it was mission critical. He tapped his temple. Your granddad would have been proud as hell you kept the chain going, he said. Even if you did have to drag your parents' reputation behind it for a bit. Christmas came quiet that year. No gala, no giant tree, just my base area apartment, a modest fake tree on a plastic stand, and a pot of chili simmering on the stove. Hal sat in my only armchair, socks in place of shoes. His cap hung on the back. 2 sailors from my unit who couldn't afford flights home sat cross-legged on the floor, passing a bowl of chips back and forth. Mrs. Nguyen from 2 doors down, widowed, kids out of state, claimed the end of the couch, wrapped in the throw blanket I'd bought on deployment. We ate off mismatched plates. Hal told endless stories, most of which started with, "Your granddad would have said." We exchanged small gifts, nothing curated for social media. No tags, no angles, just mugs with bad puns, homemade cookies, a new flannel shirt for Hal that we all pretended we hadn't noticed him eyeing at the PX. At one point, as we all argued about which crappy movie to put on next, my phone buzzed. Unknown number at first, then the voicemail icon. Later, when the apartment had gone quiet and I was stacking plates in the sink, I played it. My father's voice, thin and strained. Maya, he said. It's Dad. I, heard what you read at the party. People talked. I guess I thought maybe if we pretended it didn't happen, it would go away. A swallow. I failed you, he said. The words sounded like they hurt. I won't make excuses. Your mother is still processing. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just hope someday you'll let me explain. Without her there. Without all the noise. A beat. Hal's a good man, he added softly. Your granddad trusted him. I'm glad he was there. Call me if you feel like it. Or don't. That's your call now. The message ended. I leaned against the counter. The old me would have called back immediately, racing to patch the cracks, to soothe his guilt, to earn back something I'd never actually had. The me holding my grandfather's coin in my pocket knew better. I didn't delete it. I didn't save it as a holy relic either. I set the phone down, walked back into the living room where Hal had fallen asleep in the armchair, mouth slightly open, the soft snore of a man who had earned the right to rest. I draped the throw blanket over him. He stirred, blinked. You all right, kid? He asked, voice rough with sleep. Yeah, I said. Dad called. He searched my face. You going to call back? He asked. Someday, I said. When I can do it without rearranging myself into something he recognizes. When he wants a daughter, not a prop. He nodded, satisfied. That's fair, he said. Take your time. You've earned that. I sat on the couch, the coin warm in my palm, the scars under my ribs a dull ache now instead of a sharp line. Once upon a time, I'd thought family was something you either had or didn't, that blood decided, that paperwork was a formality. Now I knew better. Family was the man who signed when you couldn't, the sailors who showed up with cheap beer and stupid jokes when you couldn't travel, the neighbor who knocked with spring rolls because she made too many, the social worker who slid a form across the table and said, "You get to choose." Blood had started my story. It hadn't saved my life. The people in my living room had. I closed my eyes, hearing the distant echo of my mother's words, scrubbed clean by the reality that followed. Let me know if she dies. We don't have time for paperwork. They chose champagne over my pulse. But the signature that mattered belonged to a man with a ship tattoo and a promise from decades ago. I brushed my thumb over the faded words on the coin. We take care of our own. For the first time, I believed I was included in that we. Not because of my last name, but because of the way I showed up, and the way the right people showed up for me. Family is whoever stays when everyone else hangs up.